Hello, sweet friends. This is Gina, and welcome to stellarjstudios. Today, I'm going to share with you a process video of an adventure my puppy dog Wendell had at the park earlier this week, and it was amazing. So before we get started, though, I want to talk to you a little bit about good junk mail because July's good junk mail is I can't even contain myself. I know I say this every month, but for this month, for real, I cannot even contain myself. We are going to make zines, and I can't even, yeah, it's going to be good. But the reason why I'm telling you now is because I'm going to mail these out a little early. These are going to go into the mail on Friday, June 27th. And that means we only have about a week for you to get yours. I do have some left, so head on over to my shop if you are interested. My shop will be closed for the first couple of weeks of July, and I will only have good junk mail available for once July is done, and then I'll also have good junk mail for August, which is shaping up to be a pretty good month. Also, I've just now started to wrap my brain around it. Okay, having said all that, let's get back to the journal. So the other day, I took Wendell to the park and we were taking a walk. Well, it was summer camp, and so there were a lot of kids, and they were outside and doing all the things that summer camps do. Well, as we are walking, we hear the saddest little annoying almost cry from a little boy, and he just keeps whining and crying and saying, "I want to go inside." And I could tell that his counselors were probably getting really anxious because, as a former teacher, I know how this goes. And Wendell and I walked up upon these kids, and he's just not, this little boy's just not having it. So as we walk up, and these are probably 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds, one of the little guys says, "Is that a wiener dog?" And all the kids, are like, "Wiener dog, wiener dog." And I said, "Well, yes, Wendell is a wiener dog." And they said, "Well, can we pet him?" And I said, "Well, sure." So they all come over and they start putting their little grubby hands on him, which is just the cutest ever because they were sidewalk chalking, and so they had lots of sidewalk chalk all over their hands. Well, Wendell loves it, and he just totally flops out onto the grass, and all these little kids are touching him. Well, the sad little boy is still over there, and he's whining to the little counselors, who are probably, high school age, college age kids. And I said, "Hey, friend, what's going on? How come you're so sad?" And one of the counselors says he thinks that the sweat bees are gonna bite him. And I said, "Oh no." I said, "You know what, little buddy? You need to come over here because this is my friend Wendell, and Wendell has magic powers." And oh my gosh, these little kids, their eyes got so big. And they're like, "Well, what kind of magic powers does he have?" And I said, "Well," and by this time, the little sad boy, he comes over my way, and he has stopped his crying, and he's kind of intrigued. And I said, "Well, if you pet Wendell, you get these magical powers. They'll rub off onto you, and they protect you when you're outside so that nothing can bite you." And oh my gosh, yeah, it was on. The little sad kid, he at first he was like, "Well, is he gonna bite me?" And I said, "Oh no, Wendell's not gonna bite you. He loves little kids." So the sad boy starts petting Wendell. And before I know it, I am in this huge conversation with all of these little 4 and 5 year olds, and they're talking to me about wiener dogs, and they're talking to me about their own dogs. And the little sad boy, now he's moved on, he's talking about the pond, and he's telling me all the things that are in the pond. And oh my gosh, the best part was as he's telling his story, and it's like one of those long stories. As he's telling the story, he keeps saying, and plus, and plus, and plus, and I'm just loving it. I'm just dying. I mean, because this is what I did. This is what I did for the better part of 30 years. I was a teacher. I was a kid corraller. I had a special way of being able to have relationships with kids and being able to understand when you're not okay. And I haven't gotten to use that, not since I retired. And quite honestly, the last few years of my teaching career did not go as I had anticipated, or as I had wished. And I have been feeling for the last few years really, really bad about myself, down in the dumps, no self-esteem, no self-confidence, because of the way my teaching career ended. And I thought I was a failure. I thought, okay, I had magic at one time, kind of like Wendel's magic. I had magic. I know I did. I know I was an amazing teacher, and I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I know that. Like I believe it. And I always said, if I lose that magic, then I'll know it's time to move on. And it was my worst fear. And then a day came when circumstances around me, COVID, the world, parents and teachers and administrators and kids and just everything changed, and my eyes got opened, and I realized that I knew I was awesome. My students knew I was awesome, but other than that, yeah, that kind of, I was soured. COVID exposed a lot of truths, and it exposed a lot of hidden ideas that I did not know. I was not aware of. I was ignorant to the way teachers were thought of. And not everybody. There is, I mean, was still a lot of supportive parents and administrators and such, but there towards the end, it got really sad and lonely, because I missed my old self. I missed the way things used to be. And it just so happened on this day, I had been, as I do a lot of times, been stewing over my insecurities and, the way things went down. And my mind just kind of overthinks things a lot, that I always have. And I had woke up with a lot of dread and a lot of feeling like, I just wasn't enough. So going to the park and running into these little kids and having the experience with them that I did, I swear to you, I must have been walking 3 feet off the ground once we left those little kids, because I was so giddy. I was so excited. Not only was I happy that I got to hang out with those little kids, and, we made sad guy not sad anymore. Of course, I'm sure he probably found something else to be sad about later on in the day, but we had made an impact. We had made a difference. And more importantly, I had made a difference. And I saw my old self. I saw that magic that I had, and it just flowed from me. And it was just what I needed. It was that reminder that, you know what, do have a special skill when it comes to teaching and communicating with kids and even at one time parents and other teachers, and it's not lost. I wasn't a failure. It was there, and I found it again, and yeah, and it just made me happy. So that this whole story was just about me and me being happy and finding a piece of myself that, like I said, it wasn't lost. It had just been, I guess, misplaced. And again, Wendell helped me do that. So now that I've kind of gotten all that out of the way, let me talk to you a little bit about this journal spread. So the first thing you saw me do was I had a piece of paper and I just sat down and I drew some lines on it, and I made like 8 little boxes on the front and 8 little boxes on the back. So this was a strategy that I used to use with my students when I taught elementary school. And this when we were trying to write or remember something, or we were going to tell a story, I always had them break it down into small chunks and put it into boxes, just because it made it easier and less overwhelming. For some kids it didn't. They just, they didn't like the boxes. But for some of us, especially ones that struggled to write, like me, this was a strategy that worked. So what I did was, it was fresh in my memory. I came home and I just rough draft. You saw the arrows, you saw the scratchings of my pen and having to get another pen and having to get another pen, and it was just a brain dump. I was just dumping down everything because I didn't want to forget what a special moment that was, and I didn't want to forget the little details. So once I had all of that done, a couple days later, I had time to sit down and work in my journal. And I thought about drawing Wendell, but I felt like I wanted the story to be the story, if that makes any sense. And so I didn't want to try to have to come up with this masterpiece drawing of Wendell, and knowing what my drawing skill set is, and I just didn't want to fuss with that. So I found a really cool picture in an old book, and even though that's not the type of dog I had, it actually works pretty well, especially when you look at the two pictures side by side. One, I have a little Instax photo on the right hand side, and then on the left hand side was that book page. And they do look similar because they have, I call it a chocolate head, because he's got a dark brown head, and then he's got a speckly body, and long droopy ears. And so this, if you just shortened this dog's legs, he'd probably look very similar to Wendell. So that became my beginning, my starting point. And then from that picture, I kind of just grew into the pages by just adding details and adding little bits of the story, and adding in things that, images like the thistle and the chicory, because those are my two favorite flowers. And when we pulled up at the park that day, the chicory, it had rained the night before, the chicory and the thistle it was incredible. So I wanted to add that. I also wanted to add the path that we walked down. And because these were images of someone else's artwork, I wanted it to be turned into mine. So that's why I went over it with paint and colored pencil. And here you see me adding some gel pen. I zoomed in a little bit because I want you to see that going in and adding like details and stuff when you're taking artwork, and turning it, transforming it into your own, and, kind of putting your own spin on it. Going in and adding those little details really makes a big difference. And so shading in or adding little pops of color with little dots or little lines, it really helps to take what was already there and transform it into your vision or your images that you want to go with your story. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to take someone else's art. I'm just using that art as a springboard for the visual that I have, that I know I don't really have that skill set to draw, nor do I want to try to draw the whole thing on my own. Which, is why we use collage. We use collage because we like to pull in other people's visions and see if we can connect it to our own. All right, so I'm getting to the end here, and I'm going to put it back in my binder. I really enjoyed this. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Remember to check out the Rebookery shop. Get your July good junk mail. August will be available soon. And until next time, my friends, I hope you're healthy. I hope you're happy. I hope you do something creative today. And I'll talk soon. Bye.